Okay, I am here. I started the stream a few minutes early, but I believe I am live for our QA stream. So if anybody has questions for me, you can start typing them in the chat. Also, be really helpful if you can just type and say hello if you can hear me. This is my first time streaming from the road here. As you can tell by the sign in the background, I am in Portland. I have begun traveling to be able to visit different places and game stores while working remotely on all of these fun games. So please do come in, say hello, and we'll start talking about Deliverance. I'll just give it another minute or two before we get going, since we're officially supposed to start at 4 p.m., which I think it just turned 4 p.m. Pacific time. And I'm very excited to finally get Deliverance to release on the app, which will be partnering, of course, with Playdeck, the channel I'm live on. We are going to be going live on all of our platforms. It's iOS, Android, and Steam. And there's a couple of really cool things coming about it. The game is actually going to release on Thursday, and that is we will be doing another event on our Stoneblade stream Wednesday at 4 p.m., where I'll be playing the app on the beta mode one more time before you guys release it, so you can watch me play and check out more stuff. And that's going to be exciting. So it's 4 p.m. on twitch.tv/Stoneblade. And then we're just going to be gaming all day on Thursday because the app is out. So in addition to Deliverance being released, it's also going to be the 10th anniversary celebration, because last year was the 10th anniversary of Ascension's release, and this year is the 10th anniversary of the app release. And so this is actually the very first time that the app is going to get content ahead of the physical game. In part due to some coronavirus related shipping problems, the physical 10th anniversary product will not hit store shelves until at least August. And you all are going to get the ability to play with the 10th anniversary edition of the game immediately on Thursday. And even better, it's 100% free. That's right. You heard it here, folks. We have decided to give that app, give the update away for free to be able to play 10th anniversary edition. All you have to do is when you start a new game, you'll be given the choice to choose either Chronicle of the Godslayer, which is the original, the OG edition, or you can update it to 10th anniversary edition. And what do you get in 10th anniversary edition? You get not only a brand new, very exciting art for everything. We've updated the art, we've modernized everything, still keeping the essence of the game with its storybook feel and its iconic characters, but modernizing it into a new form that really resonates and really takes a lot of what we've learned about art direction and creation. And we're very excited about that. And so again, you could just play with those things. We also updated several of the cards in 10th anniversary, which will allow you to, so we've updated some of the honor totals and some of the costs and some of the effects to kind of balance the game a little bit better and make things a little bit more streamlined. Again, taking 10 years of experience and applying that to improve the game and make it even better than it was. But the most exciting piece here is Deliverance. So let me talk a little bit about Deliverance. Deliverance is the third set that we've released that uses the insight mechanic. It follows from Dreamscape, which came out several years ago, and then the Delirium, which came out pretty recently. And they all use the insight mechanic, which is a resource that you get that stores from turn to turn. And it's really been one of our most popular mechanics, and it's actually very exciting to be able to bring it back. And it forms a complete and cohesive block, because one of the things that Deliverance and Delirium playing together is wonderful. Deliverance, Delirium, and Dreamscape playing together is wonderful. One of the things that actually the app has influence for us, because when I made Ascension originally as a physical game, it was designed to be played basically in two set blocks, right? Set one, which is Chronicle of the Godslayer, was designed to be paired with Return of the Fallen. Set two, Storm of Souls, was designed to be paired with Immortal Heroes, and so on down the line. And one of the things that we didn't really expect, to be honest, was for people to just smash all the sets together and play them, because in a physical version of the game, that's totally impractical, right? I think I know one or two people that actually do that, but it's just like so much. You're shuffling 1,000 cards. It's just crazy. But in the app, it's easy. And it's actually super fun to have this kind of crazy experience where you never know what's going to happen. But one of the challenges is that some of the game mechanics are designed in a way that they don't play as well when they're diluted. And insight is one of those, because every time a new card, one of the Dreamborn cards shows up, all the players get insight, and if you acquire a Dreamborn card, you get insight. So when you're playing with just insight sets, like with the back when you could only do so with Dreamscape, then that made sense and it was fine. But once you diluted it with a bunch of other sets, the Dreamscape cards became less powerful because you had less insight available in the deck. And so we've done two things to fix that now. Obviously, the fact that you have now two new sets that use insight, Deliverance and Delirium, which will also, I believe, be purchasable in a bundle once Deliverance is out. So in case you didn't get Delirium at first, you can get them all at a bundle. But in addition, we're going to have the fact that we actually, in Deliverance, we added in the Dream Seeker card. So every starting deck is going to have another bonus card in everybody's starting deck when you use Deliverance that gives you an insight and draws a card. And so what that does is, no matter how much you dilute your game, no matter how many sets you throw in, you're guaranteed to have a steady stream of insight, which is a really awesome way for you to be able to play it and ensure that the game works better, and that you can continue to combine however many sets you want. But my recommendation is try first by combining Deliverance and Delirium and Dreamscape, and then play those together and see what that feels like, and then go ahead and dilute them all you like. So I'll talk a little bit more about some of the specific things that we've added in Deliverance, but I also want to know some more questions for you, whether it's about Deliverance specifically or anything that's Ascension related or anything at all. Just post those questions in the chat, and I'll get to those as we move through the chat and the discussion. So the core mechanics of Deliverance. I've already talked about the insight mechanic and how important that is, right? Every time a Dreamborn card shows up, or every time you acquire a Dreamborn card, or every time you play the Dream Secret, you get an insight token, and those insight tokens can then be spent to do things that are cool. In Dreamscape, you could use them to buy Dreamscape cards that were set off to the side. In Delirium, you could use them to roll the Delirium die and get some random cool effect. Now in Deliverance, we give you a lot of cool stuff to do. I mean, and I'll tell you that when I design sets, I try to generally be very restrictive in the designs. I don't want to do too much in one set because I don't want to overwhelm the players, right? And so we'll cycle stuff in, we'll cycle stuff out. We'll usually introduce maybe 2 or 3 new mechanics in every set. But when it came to Deliverance, well, we got a little excited. Gary Rant was the lead design on this set, and I worked closely with him on this, but we really felt like this was probably the last time we were going to come back to the insight mechanic, maybe forever, at the very least for many, many years, right? It's going to be a long time before we come back to this. So we wanted to milk it for all it's worth. We want to do as many cool things as we could. So I'll talk about a couple of them here. One is we introduced the Pacifia as an always available card in the center to be purchased. So Pacifia, you actually, if you remember, was actually in the original Dreamscape. She is the guardian of the Dream Realm. And she's sort of part of at the end of the story of Dreamscape, she kind of sacrifices herself to like get everybody out of the Dreamscape and kind of help to save the realm at that point and close the door to the Dreamscape. In Delirium, the doors to the Dreamscape are opened once again as the temples and the Gift of the Elements are opened, and then all this madness comes out into the world. And in Delirium, the main characters actually get warped into new versions, so that's why you see like Dartha, who's traditionally an enlightened character, become Mechana, and you see all of these other characters get warped around, and all these kinds of crazy monsters and things come in. And now in Deliverance, Pacifia is back. She's delivering us and saving us from the horrors of Delirium. And so she's available as a 16 insight cost card in the center. And anyone can purchase her. But of course, 16 is a huge number. And so it's something that you're kind of racing after and chasing after. And we also included her 4 weapons. So in her art, she's a 4-armed creature. We also have a mini of her in our Ascension Tactics release, which is coming out also this summer. And she's if you get her weapons, each of her weapons you have in play reduces her insight cost by 4. So it's another way to kind of get there. If you can get all 4 of her weapons, you can get her for free. And she comes right in your hand. She's super powerful and just a really cool mechanic. In addition, we also created some new mechanics for cards that are in the center row that can interact with insight. One of them is the Phantasm, and Phantasm is if you have a hero in the center row with Phantasm, it'll have a specific cost, and if you pay a certain insight cost, you can play the card right away, and that lets you get its effect immediately, and then it goes and gets banished. And that mechanic was actually inspired by our other deck building game, Shards of Infinity, which we had mercenaries that you could fast play, and you had this mechanic. And we thought that was so cool, we wanted to bring that into the Ascension universe as well. And that in many ways is like a hero that gets to kind of function like a monster, right? In Ascension, usually you kill a monster, you get the effect right away. It doesn't go into your discard pile. That's sort of like what happens when you play a Phantasm card. Of course, you're using the insight mechanics. So there's a lot more strategy and timing in when you do that. And then we did the same thing kind of inverted for monsters. Monsters now have a Dreambind cost, which is whenever you defeat that monster, you could pay its Dreambind cost and insight, and then that card gets added to your deck. And then the monster, every time you play it, it does whatever its reward. You gain its reward. So it does like lots of nasty things. It could, for the first time in Ascension's history, you can repeatedly destroy opponents' constructs with a card you have in play, or steal cards out of their hand, or do all kinds of nasty things. So we certainly like in general with Ascension, I try to avoid doing like super nasty things to players with consistently, but we allowed that to happen in Dreamscape. You can get the right combination of cards, and you really want to hate on some of your friends in a game or hate on the AI, you could do a lot of really cool stuff there. In addition, we also brought back the transform mechanic. Transform is one of our most popular mechanics. We first introduced it in Rise of Vigil, where we had we use the energy mechanic to trigger them. Now you can use insight to transform cards. We have a bunch of mechanic constructs that the blueprints that Emery makes to not Emery that what's her name makes Emma makes to turn into the Iron Heart, which is a really badass ship, giant airship, which then comes into play in the next set in Skulls and Sails. You can transform those. There's a bunch of cool cards in hand that can transform into super powerful forms. So that's also really fun. So you can see like there's tons of ways to spread an insight, and because it's a resource that stores from turn to turn, it is something that you have a lot of really interesting decisions to make. So if you're the kind of strategic player who really likes to plan far ahead, being able to play with this set is going to be a home run for you. And there's so many cool like things that can come up. It should be fun and accessible for everyone. And especially when you combine all the insight sets together, now you've got tons of different tools to play with, tons of different ways to spend your resources. And so it's really, really fun. I see a question in the chat about, was it a challenge to create Deliverance, or was it an easy process coming from Delirium? It's a good question. I think every set has its own challenges and advantages. In many ways, this one was like, it was just really fun because as I talked about, we kind of got to throw the kitchen sink at it. We got to do kind of everything we wanted to do that we would normally hold back on and just throw it all into this set. And we were because we had just finished working with Delirium and our heads were already very much in the space of the insight mechanic. It was a pretty good way to like kind of just instantly transition and test them together. So it was, there was plenty of challenges working with it, but I think it was one of the easier sets to design because we were just having so much fun with insight. There's a question of, is the physical version already released? It absolutely is. It has been out for a long time. I think it might be out. It might be out of stock right now. So I'll take a look and see if it's still available. If you can, you could check the Stoneblade store or link to the Ultra Pro store, or go to your friendly local game store. And so those are. So it's been out for quite a while now. I think like two or 3 years now. 2 years at least. So the people who have been playing the physical game should be very familiar with this, but I know for many of you, the app is by far your favorite and most convenient way to play. So we have, you're going to really love this. It's going to be tons of new content. And again, being able to combine that and play with the 10th anniversary stuff, be able to have some more games played online is going to be quite a bit of fun. I see a question about, is insight going to be a requiring, I assume you mean recurring theme in future expansions? And the short answer is not for the foreseeable future. I kind of mentioned this at the start of the talk, but really this block, right? We try to do 2 set blocks, was really the return to the dreamscape, the return to insight. And so between Delirium and Deliverance, we really did a ton of space exploring. We designed a ton of stuff for the insight mechanic. And so we're going to take a break from insight for a while. For those of you that are following the physical game, you know that we've already released Skulls and Sails, which is a pirate-themed set. And players have pirate ships that move around the board and kind of travel from space to space. And you can use crew, and there's a kraken that's trying to eat you, and all kinds of cool stuff. And then we have the new set, Curse of the Golden Isle, which is the second set of the kind of pirate themes, right? That's going to be coming out this summer as well. So the pirate sets are there, and then we have new themes coming after that, which we've already have in the works, but I'm not going to talk about those today because those are going to be secrets. Those are going to be our 2022 releases. So I will come back and talk more about those, but not just yet. So if you love Insight, Deliverance, Delirium, and Dreamscape, that's where they live. That's where they're going to live for a while. So there's a question of when you released Chronicle, our very first set, did you imagine Ascension being as big as it is now? No way. I called it Chronicle of the Godslayer because I just thought that sounded really cool, and I didn't even think that the game would ever potentially be in mass market. And as it turns out, the word Godslayer is not like the best thing to do when you want to be in stores like Target and Walmart. So I certainly had no idea we would ever be at that stage. I had planned for 3 years of content before I launched Ascension. I kind of had mechanics and I had a major story arc that I wanted to play out over the first 3 years. I never thought it was going to go further than that, so I thought that was more than enough. And as a designer, as a tip, it's useful to plan a few years in the future, even if you don't think you're ever going to do an expansion, because it helps you to kind of think through your designs and kind of give yourself some room to maneuver and doesn't let when you're designing you don't box yourself out in the future. But once I saw how successful it was, of course, we started expanding things and creating new story and creating new mechanics. And I love Ascension. There's tons of fun stuff to do. And so I see a question that's tied to the Ascension story and how we're going to build the Ascension story in future expansions. And that's a great question. There's so much room to explore in the world. And so what we've seen so far is there's this, the recent history, as I mentioned, with this return to the dreamscape after the events of Gift of the Elements, where we ended up finding these sort of temples and opening up the temples and finding out what was going on inside. We found this ancient gate into the dreamscape that got opened up, and we learned that without pacifia there, the dreamscape was leaving all these nightmares, and it became this delirium, and all the nightmares spread into the world. And now Deliverance is sort of ending that story arc of bringing ourselves back into like sanity and having pacifia come back and restoring the dreamscape to its possible realm. And we barely survive that, right? And the heroes, including Emma, barely escape. And you actually see a card in Deliverance where the Ironheart, her ship, is actually flying out of the maw of being able to escape the dreamscape. And then by leaving there, we then end up in the world where the pirates are, right? And then we see the Kraken, and we learn about all these new power sources. And so the battle over this new territory that's been discovered, and everybody getting their ships and battling is the next piece of this. And again, I'm not spoiling the next set that's coming after Curse of the Golden Isles, which is coming out in August, because there's a lot of fun stuff that's coming, and we're going to start exploring some brand new worlds that we've never seen before, and we've only hinted at. So I promise I'll have more updates for you on that, but not today. And I appreciate the comment about that you guys are going to keep buying the sets as long as we putting them out. As long as you keep buying them, I'll keep making them. I'll make the same promise back, because I do feel like it's a privilege to make this game. I love doing it. It's so much fun. The community is amazing. And for those of you that haven't already joined, please do join us on Discord. We have an Stoneblade Discord where we occasionally have games, and there's also an entire Ascension Discord where our two-time world champion Glover actually organizes community monthly tournaments and cups. And so they're doing another one that's going to feature, of course, Deliverance. So you'll get a chance to play in tournaments, and we support them with little prizes and store credits and cool stuff like that. So there's tons of opportunity to connect to a community, and to be able to build everything together. So it's really fun. That's one of the best parts, especially looking at the last year of COVID. I mean, we've all been trapped at home. We haven't been able to see our friends, and we haven't been able to sit around the game table and play games for a long time. And things like the Ascension app and the communities in these Discords have been a lifeline for me, I know, and I know for a lot of other people, where you can still connect with friends, you can still play games you love. And so now, it's so great to have some new content to be able to connect over and share with. Okay, I see some questions about what's my favorite pairing of Ascension expansions in general, and what's my favorite set I've made so far. I get this question a lot, and it's always kind of like asking to like, which is your favorite child? Like which of the ones you like? Yeah, I like each of them for different reasons. Um, I think probably my favorite standalone set, if I have to pick one, is I really like to play with. I think Rise of Vigil. I love the energy mechanic. It's like that's the first time we introduced treasure, which we then bring back in Skulls and Sails, because I mean, come on, you can't do a pirate set without treasure. That's crazy. But we revamped the mechanic. The fact that you have the treasure and energy creates this like very exciting randomizing effect in the game, that you can have these like crazy outcomes that we wouldn't have allowed otherwise. And that's just kind of fun, exotic, like kind of crazy stuff that can happen. But I got to be honest, if I'm talking about two sets to pair together, I think Deliverance and Delirium are probably the best ones. I think that we just did I think a really good job of designing those to play well together. And we knew from the beginning that we wanted them to play well together and play well with Dreamscape. And so there's a lot going on there, and it's a very, as much as like Rise of Vigil is very much a like high variance set, right? It's more, less long term thinking, more a lot of like kind of seeing, having fun things happen. And I think Deliverance is much more of a strategic planning very far into the future and really trying to optimize your turns. I think the combination of Deliverance and Delirium gets that really good balance. And so that's probably uh, my favorite element. Um, I got another great question. If you could go back in time and make it one change to Ascension, whether it's a core mechanic or a set mechanic, what would it be? Well, so I got a chance to do that because I was able to make 10th Anniversary Edition, where I got to remake the fundamentals of set one, and so I was able to redesign a lot of the cards and rebalance some stuff. And so I actually, you can see the changes that I wanted to make. You can see what got done. And so definitely go check that out. As far as like bigger scale mechanics go, I'm pretty happy with how the game engine works, and the fact that it's been able to support everything that's been built out to this point is really exciting. I mean, we made some changes to. Yeah, I don't think there's anything major mechanically that I would change about the game. I think it's just little balance tweaks here and there. I think there are certain sets that in retrospect, it's funny because it's the same sort of thing. Like, when I look back at Dreamscape and then I saw it combined with all the other sets in the app, I'm like, oh, this doesn't work as well as I want it to because it gets too diluted. But now I've been able to solve that problem too, because Deliverance makes sure that your deck never gets so diluted that the insight mechanic doesn't work. So I'm fortunate in that the fact that I've been working on this game for so long has allowed me to make a lot of changes. There's a few broken cards here and there that can kind of lead to, I get my people messaging me with like these, 10,000 point turns or whatever, until they break the app, with mostly with a Dayu, but I actually think those things are fun, right? They're in a real like competitive game. It's rare that those things are going to become degenerate because people can play around them and stop you, but it lets people have these crazy experiences and they get so excited by it. I think even those things that are, can kind of have high variance are pretty fun. Um, there's a question of, does Deliverance add more Dreamscape cards? The answer is no. We do not add more Dreamscape cards. The Dreamscape cards are only in Dreamscape, and they are sort of cards that you can separate. You start with at the beginning of the game that you can buy and add to your deck from using Insight. And we didn't want to go back to that because it just felt like we were just retreading the same ground. And in order to introduce more of them, we would have to do a lot of them because the sets all are designed to stand alone, right? Even if you've never played Dreamscape or Delirium for that matter, Deliverance will still stand on its own, be a solid game experience all by itself. So I think those things are, that's always important to us. We don't want to just like throw in a few cards that don't make any sense if you don't own a set from 5 years ago, right? So everything is standalone. So we stayed away from more Dreamscape cards, but if you play Dreamscape with Deliverance and Delirium or either individually, you're going to see new context to all of your Dreamscape cards, because the fact that you're getting insight in these different ways, the fact that you have different ways to spend insight makes a huge impact on those things. So you'll get to see the old cards in a new way, if that makes sense. Let's see here. We've got, is there any chance that the app will ever get the solitaire mode from the physical games? You know, it's possible. We've talked a lot about doing something. If we do something like that, it'll probably be more exciting than that, to be honest. Because look, if you just want to play Ascension on your own in the app, you could just play against the AI, right? The solitaire mode was the way that we were trying to get you something like the AI in the physical game, and the app just does that better. So I would not put solitaire mode by itself. However, I have been talking with Playdeck for a long time now about what it would be like if we made a campaign, right? We had some kind of campaign adventure or something that you could unlock. And I'll tell you what, because we're still deciding whether that's something we should do. If you think that campaign mode would be something awesome that you would be happy to kind of pay for as an add-on, go ahead and type something in the chat. So let us know, like campaign, say yes or no on a campaign in the chat, and let me know what you think, because that maybe will help decide where we prioritize that in our list. Let's see here. What was the toughest expansion or expansions to create mechanically? What about in developing the story? I think mechanically, we probably had the most trouble with Gift of the Elements. That set actually ended up going through multiple different, like, complete overhauls. We had a mechanic where cards would like stay in play for an extra turn, and you could like or they would like stack up. Heroes would stack up and play, and you could return them. We bounced around with this, this sort of hot potato idea, or tug of war with the temples. And I think that the temples ended up being worth a few too many points possibly at the end of the game. There was a lot of complex interwoven things. Oh, sorry, it's not Gift of the Elements. It's the no, I'm tripping on the name. The thing with the temples. I'll remember it, or somebody can remind me. So those are that one was the probably the hardest that we had. And from a story standpoint, that's a good question. I don't know. I think that the couple of sets that we started doing with sort of the dawn of champions era, I think we didn't do as good a job of telling a story. I think we became a little bit more episodic rather than having an overarching narrative that really carried from set to set. And so I think that's where, once we finished my kind of original 3-year arc, we didn't do a good enough job of immediately building another big arc, right? Like the Marvel universe and the MCU, right? They had this 10-year 3-phase arc, and they kind of connected it all together, and then they've paused, and now they're going to start again and tell this other new arc. And hopefully they do as good a job the second time. And I think it took us a little longer than I would have liked to kind of get the arc back up and running. And so that was probably where we struggled. But we've gotten better, and now with the sets pair and there's better storytelling. And I want to give props to George Rockwell, who's our creative director. He's been on for the last 4 years or so, and he's really done a great job of helping us with both the art and the story and helping bring things together. So I love telling a great, awesome, epic narrative, and it's been really fun to kind of get better at that. The Chronicle 10-year set's going to be awesome. Is there going to be any more special or collector's edition sets for the other expansions? Yes, there is. We have new collector's edition plans. The year 6 collector's edition will be coming out this summer. Again, it was just delayed shipping and everything with the challenges from COVID, so that's coming right away. We are planning we'll do year 7 content. Will probably be in its own collector's edition, probably in 2022 at this point. And we have plans for another exciting version of some new content, but that one I'm just going to tease. Excuse me, I'm going to tease there because we have a lot of cool stuff. We also have a carry case that's coming out. So for those of you that do like to buy all the physical expansions, we'll have something that you can carry all of the cards and have some cool items in it, and a few exclusive cool extra. We have extra champions for those of you who love Dawn of Champions, so you can play with or without Dawn of Champions, which is super fun. So that is very exciting, and those are fun things to come. What part of storytelling in card games is your favorite? So, I mean, so there's 2 tiers of this, right? When you say storytelling in card games, there's 2 things that I think you can talk about here. One is like the story of the world, and that I'm kind of telling over the course of the sets, right? Chronicle of the Godslayer talks about the rise of a champion to be able to defeat Samael, the fallen god, and what happened with that. And then you have Storm of Souls, where the undead are releasing upon the world, and we have to find out that Kythus, the guardian of the dead, is now trying to take over Samael's spot, and you're trying to resolve that and save the heroes that are imprisoned in the soul gems. And those are the kind of bigger arcs that are really fun. It's really fun to tell a narrative story where the same characters are going to evolve, and see where they end up from the beginning to the end and what happens there. But there's a second version of storytelling that I think is frankly even more compelling in card games, which is the story that you tell as a player, right? When you are playing a game, do you become immersed in what's going on? Do you get to feel like you're, some badass, ninja warrior that you're going to be fighting as a void character that's battling the darkness? Or do you feel like you're getting, the powers of nature coming to your aid? And like, what happens? And do you build this awesome machine with the mechana, and you kind of can feel the puzzle pieces coming together in this, right? If you get to tell those stories, or tell epic stories about how you got the perfect card at the perfect time and come together, and the main part of my job, I think, is to create these experiences that you then tell stories about. And so I love that. I love hearing player stories and being able to build those moments for people that they remember and that they talk about. And so that's really my favorite part of storytelling, even though building the cool worlds and epic arcs is also great. I mean, I have a great job. I'm all of it's a lot of fun parts. Let's see here. We've got some people excited about campaign mode. That's good. and some people excited about a lot of the player interaction points in Deliverance. You definitely have a lot more. I mean, even just if you just think about the value of a pacifia as a mechanic, the idea that we're all chasing after a one-of card that's available from the start of the game, that whoever gets it gets a huge edge. There's this constant tension that's going on because part of the job of us in Deliverance is we're constantly tempting you with all these really powerful effects you could spend your insight on. And so, do you want to spend your insight on the thing now, or do you want to save and race up to pacifia? Now, if you're ahead in the race for pacifia, then maybe the people below you are like, well, I'm not sure, and then maybe I'll spend down, and I don't think I can win. But then maybe you'll spend down, and they get a way to catch up. And so there's all these kinds of cool mechanics like that. Let's see here. Have matches in any tournaments or game nights playing Ascension you've had impacted the story? Well, we definitely have. Tournaments impacting our story has been kind of something we've played around with for a long time. Now, as a long-standing tradition, whoever wins our world championships, which gets held at Gen Con every year, we turn you into a card, right? So Aaron, the Godslayer, was the very first winner of our very first tournament. He became the Godslayer in our lore. And then we've had, tons of people who've won, including Glover, who became a Dream Titan. He became, and actually, I believe that's in this new Deliverance set, or I forget if it's in Delirium or Deliverance, but is in one of these sets, I think. And then we have the captain that he's a captain in one of the characters in Skulls and Sails as a hero, I believe. So there's tons of cool ways to get influenced and get involved in the game. Have you ever thought about or tried to do some kind of license expansion with another brand like Star Wars or SpongeBob? SpongeBob, that would be pretty funny. Yeah, we've talked about it. I think doing a licensed version of Ascension, I think, could certainly be very cool. I love Star Wars. I love Marvel. I love all these kinds of brands. But I really do just love to tell a great story and be able to have the freedom to kind of do what we want to do with the Ascension universe. So it is something we've talked about and kicked around. It might be something that we do in the future, but it's something that we probably won't do in the super near future. I think it's a cool idea, but there are plenty of deck building games out there for these other brands. And so if I were going to do it, I would want to make sure we really brought something special to the table, and it's not just sticking Star Wars images on Ascension cards. You don't want to really make some cool mechanics that made it feel like Star Wars, or whatever brand, or SpongeBob, whatever we ended up doing. So it's on the table, but not just yet. How do you go about creating the promo packs to help tell part of the story in such a small set? Yeah, that's a good question. So the promos are, they don't really advance. They're not, in my head, they're not really designed to advance the story. They're designed to do something cool, create some new kind of cohesive experience, or like some extra stuff that could go on, that would be stuff that's a little bit too weird for me to do in a set, right? Because I feel like when it comes to sets, I need to give you things that, like, any set could be played and people will still feel like this is a game of Ascension. This is something I want to buy into and play. If I With promo cards, I tend to let things get a little more wacky, right? So we have things like the Rat King and the Rat Queen, and the ability to like have the cards all covered up, or the Portal pack, which we designed specifically just for the app, where random cards can show up based on what you buy from the portal, or like all kinds of crazy stuff like that. So the the promos are more where I just get to have fun. We even have a card which I guess probably won't make it into the app, but like that's in the physical game, where like forces you to shuffle whenever you play a mechanic construct. You can force a player to shuffle, which is pretty funny. So promos are really kind of more of a fun thing. The leprechaun, we did it themed for for the the holiday theme, where there's leprechauns and green things in March. Man, can't call it to mind now, but what I'm talking about. And we did the Easter Bunny for Easter, and all kinds of fun stuff like that. So promos are really designed for fun. So let's see. Have you ever thought about turning Ascension into a tabletop RPG like Dungeons and Dragons? 100% yes. In fact, we even have an initial prototype of an Ascension RPG that we have been working on internally. We've been working to schedule some time to play test it. It's kind of a back burner fun project, but it's something we would love to do, because and I see another question about this. What was the initial story behind creating Ascension? I love RPGs. I love creating epic worlds and giving people room to play in them, and the world of Ascension was built, the game was built honestly as just something for me and my friends to play. I did not ever expect that it was going to be what it is today. I built it as, you know, so my story, and I see another question about my life as a as a game designer and my childhood dreams, and so let's, I started off. I got into the gaming industry because of Magic the Gathering. When I was 17, I won the U.S. National Championships. That led to a career where I was able to travel around the world. I made a living playing Magic. I would go to tournaments in London and Sydney and Rome, and that's how I paid my way through college. And it was really amazing to be able to travel like that, to be able to have competition at the highest levels, to be able to make amazing friendships that I maintain to this day. And a lot of those friendships and those connections that ended up allowing me to get my first job as a game designer after dropping out of law school because I wasn't happy doing that at Upper Deck. And some of those same people were the ones who first started working on Ascension with Rob Doherty and Brian Kibler and a bunch of others where it was just like hanging out and working with my friends. And so after working at Upper Deck and doing designs to them I worked on the Marvel and DC trading card game called Versus System. I created the World of Warcraft miniatures game, which also ended up coming into play later when I made Ascension Tactics, which will be coming out this summer. A lot of really fun stuff that came from that. But when I quit and I started on my own, I did some design consulting work, but I discovered Dominion, and Dominion is, deck building game that has like fixed sets of piles of cards that you could play and draw from. And I loved that really evoked a lot of what constructed Magic feels like without having to buy hundreds of dollars of Magic cards or tons of sets. It's all in one box. And I thought that was a really clever idea. But after playing it a lot, there were several things I wanted to change, right? More than constructed Magic, I really love sealed deck, like drafting, right? Where you have a limited set of cards and you can pull those cards and then have to build the best deck you can out of what you got. And I think that makes it far more replayable and far more fun. And that's kind of the heart of what Ascension is. It's like taking that idea of Dominion and where Dominion put a constructed game into a box, I wanted to put a drafting game into a box. And so I just did that and just kind of just for fun to play with my friends. And I started playing and playing. And then I remember a conversation I had with Rob Doherty where he's like, he saw the prototype I played and he's like, dude, this is great. You have the ball, like run with it, go. And I was like, all right, whatever, we'll give it a shot. And Rob helped me with some of the stuff at the beginning. And I just kind of really leveraged a lot of the fact that I just had friends who were really talented in gaming to kind of test it and give some feedback. And, when I released it, it was like all of my life savings I ended up putting into Ascension. I mean, literally to do like the first 10,000 unit print run, it was all the money I had. And I took a chance to kind of put it out there and hope for the best. And we sold out of that entire print run before it even landed from China. It was like incredible out of the gate. So we started reprinting and doing more stuff. And then that kind of just took off from there. And that's what was the founding of Stoneblade. And it's why I was able to release all kinds of other projects, including working with people like Richard Garfield to make Soulforge. And we actually have a new version of Soulforge that we're making. And we're going to be doing a Kickstarter for this summer called Soulforge Fusion, which I probably don't have time to get into here, but super exciting. Again, if you join our Stoneblade Discord or follow Stoneblade, sign up for our email list, we can give you updates on that. But all kinds of stuff that came out of it. And so Ascension is just, I'm eternally grateful for. And of course, to the Playdeck team for building such an incredible app. I think that a huge part of why Ascension is so popular today and why it's been able to touch so many people is the app, right? Obviously, you can play dozens of games on the app in the time it takes you to get people over and play one game physically. I mean, that was actually one of my selling points for Ascension compared to Dominion was that Dominion, it takes like 30 minutes just to set the board up and get everything done. And you could play a whole game of Ascension in 30 minutes, but with the app, you can play a whole game of Ascension in 5 minutes, or some people play it in 2 minutes. I've seen some pretty fast players out there. So, and then, I think these are, they asked me, is this a childhood dreams for me? Like these were, these are absolutely dreams that you can't even imagine. I mean, I always loved games, but I really thought I was supposed to be a lawyer. I mean, both my parents are lawyers. My path was that's what I was supposed to be. And the fact that I was able to kind of craft this new life for myself and find something that was passionate about, that I was driven to, and that I was able to kind of turn away from that path has been one of the best decisions I'd ever made. And it's something I always encourage people to do, right? If you feel like you're trapped, if you feel like you're doing something that you're not passionate about, start trying to create that space for yourself to do something that you are passionate about. I'm not saying, quit everything and run away and start just working on games, but it is option. It is available for you. And for those of you that actually are passionate about games, this is something I'm actually passionate about helping people with. So I have not only I have a podcast that's completely free called Think Like a Game Designer, where I interview a lot of the top designers in the world, including, Richard Garfield and Jordan Weissman and, all kinds of incredible people. And you can learn from them. I also have a book by the same title, Think Like a Game Designer, and just I'm actually launched a masterclass, which is like a video online course where we actually do masterminds and you can work with me directly. So for people, whether you have no idea how to make games or you've got a game in the works that you want some support on, if you go to thinklikeagamedesigner.com, you can find all those resources. But mostly, whether you do that or not, if you find something that you're passionate about, I cannot stress more enough how important it is to follow that. Because if I had not followed my dreams, whether that was quitting law school, quitting my job to start my own company, putting the effort in and really taking some risks to put Ascension out there, we wouldn't be having this conversation today. And who knows, I'd probably be a lawyer somewhere in New York, miserable. So, instead of here in Portland, traveling around making games and talking to you all. So I do really want you to, I just want to encourage that. So sorry, that's good. I'll end that rant, but it's very important. I'm very passionate about it. What was the initial inspiration for the story behind Ascension, and why did you choose to frame it in a deck building game? It's a great question. I think so. The deck building game came first, right? So I started, most of my history is about building mechanics that I love and then building a story to support it. Lately, more of our games have been story first, and we've been better at telling a better story as a foundation. But for the most part, especially back in those days, it was mechanics first. And the motivation for the story was, trying to build something that was going to be like it came out of an epic storybook, like it came out of an old time story and a classic tale. And I wanted to make sure that we had characters and factions that you could really relate to. So building the Mechana and the Lifebound and the Void and the Enlightened was a big part of it, the starting it. And this idea that you as a player were the hero was really important. And then that you're somehow interacting with and battling these great forces. And so that's the idea of this, like we came together fighting this god, taking out this fallen god. And so that's kind of the pieces kind of came together because the mechanics of the game had you killing monsters and earning points, but not really battling each other. So we wanted the story to match that world. So in Ascension, even though you're competing for honor to see who's the best warrior, you're not really fighting each other. And so that's where the kind of story sort of evolved from what the game was. Let's see. Outside of making Ascension, what other hobbies and passions do you have? Well, I in addition to gaming, which I'm obviously very passionate about, I love music and dancing. I got to tell you, this past year of not being able to go out dancing, not being able to go to festivals, not being able to go to shows, has been really tough for me. I just love being around people. I love, just laughing and dancing and traveling. And so that's again where, I live originally in San Diego, and I just 3 weeks ago got rid of all my stuff, put some things into storage, a little 5x10 storage, and just started driving up the coast. And because I've been working remotely, we did some stops along the coast and saw friends. I'm here in Portland for a month. I'm going to be in Seattle for a month. Eventually, we'll be flying down to Costa Rica for a month. And being able to travel is another huge passion of mine. And so because I can work from anywhere, I can have this conversation with you from anywhere, I figured why not take advantage of that? And then once, it becomes safe again, we'll definitely start doing some more of those more of those festivals and music events, as well as getting together in gaming. I can't wait. I hope to see people at Gen Con in September and see people at other gaming conventions, because it's just, as much as I love the digital play and being able to hang out with people in the Discord and play online, which we will do plenty of, there's no substitute for just getting around a table together. So I'm very excited about that. A question about, I'm not all that familiar with Ascension Tactics, but I would love to know what inspired you to create it and what it's about. That's a great question. I love miniatures games. So in addition, card games, okay, I started with Magic the Gathering. Card games are obviously, my heart. I love it. But I also love miniatures games. I used to play Warhammer 40K back when I was a kid. Just something cool and visceral about seeing all the characters laid out and the battles, and it's just much cooler than just like a card game. If you're gonna have a physical space, like put some cool characters down. And so I made the World of Warcraft miniatures game back when I was at Upper Deck. And so not only did I design the game for that, but I also became the brand manager and the product manager, and I flew to China and inspected the factory and worked with sculptors. And so I knew everything there was to make about miniatures games, plastic miniature games. So it's actually been something I've wanted to do forever. And it really wasn't until not only working with Ultra Pro and Chris Struck over there, who's an amazing product manager and was able to help us with some of the designs, but also just like Kickstarter, frankly, like because Kickstarter as a platform exists, like miniatures are very expensive to make, but if you know you're going to sell a certain amount, then you can produce them and it becomes more economical. So those things like unlocked it. And for those of you that want to know a little bit about what Ascension Tactics is, imagine Ascension, right? But instead of power killing monsters, you use power to command your champions. And each champion that you have on your team has a command cost, and you move them around the board and you battle other players' champions. So it's much more like you actually are fighting against other players. You're trying to control territory in the center. There's terrain that can get in the way. There's all kinds of cool different effects. You could summon extra heroes to your side of the board. And then we also added in a campaign mode. So if you want to play cooperatively, you can play cooperatively and follow through the story and go through different scenarios. It's super fun. If you know Ascension, you already know most of the rules. It's just kind of this layer on top of it that lets you battle with cool miniatures. If you're excited about that, definitely check it out. Only Kickstarter backers are going to be able to get it first, but we'll have a retail version, I believe, in August, or I think at the latest September. All right. Let's see here. How closely did you work with the artist behind the look for Ascension? Oh, I see. What's also the most rewarding part of the process of creating Ascension? I'll answer that. The most rewarding part of the process for creating Ascension is getting to see fans and see fans when they first get to see the game and play the game. So there's two parts that are most exciting in game design as a designer. The first part is like when you first come up with a cool idea and you're first like, oh man, wouldn't it be neat if, right? Like, wouldn't it be neat if took, instead of Dominion having fixed piles of cards, you had a random set of cards, and what would that look like, and how could you streamline it? That's cool. But then the end, when you have a finished product and you get to like see people play with it, and I have so many stories of people that have come together, whether it's like marriage proposals or people getting tattoos or fathers and sons getting to bond or families getting together or staying connected using the app, even though like someone like a loved one went off to war, they could still battle and be able to connect over Ascension. Those kinds of things really matter to me, right? My goal in life is to connect and inspire and delight people. And if these games can really provide real connection, meaningful friendships that last a lifetime. And I owe that in my life, right? The friendships I talked about from Magic and from sitting around the gaming table. And now, like, I've been able over the last decade and more to be able to have that for others. And that's just been, I mean, it's so rewarding. I'm just so blessed to be able to do what I do. So as far as working with the artist for the look of Ascension, so there's two phases to this, and we've talked about it a lot. Actually, we did a whole lesson on this in my Think Like a Game Designer course. But the beginning was working with Eric Saby, and Eric Saby was a friend of mine from like a decade before. Like when I first moved out of college, he lived down the hall from me, and we became friends. And I loved his art style. He just had all these cool scratchboard pieces, all these like amazing things. And so fast forward 10 years, when I wanted to first make my own game, and I wanted to find an art forest, I called Eric up, and he had a lot of pieces that I already knew I would love to use. And so his art style became the foundation for the story, and I would create stories around his characters and then ask him to draw and create certain other characters. And so that was really fun and really cool. And then nowadays, when we did the revamp for 10th anniversary edition, we spent a lot of time. We actually spent 2 years working on the new art style for 10th anniversary edition. That's also featured in Ascension Tactics. And we worked with not only George Rockwell, who's our creative director, but we also like got some advice from some of the top creative directors in the industry, people who did creative direction for Magic and for Blizzard and for all kinds of big games, to really help dial in like what are the core pillars of our game, what's going to make it be new and look great, but still have that same feel, that same essence that Eric's very original sketches did. And we're actually working on an art book right now that will eventually make available, where you can sort of follow the whole story and see it, and we tell that story in some more detail. So it's been really fun to be able to kind of go through that process. Let's see here. How many versions of Chronicles did you have to go through before nailing down the version that we all know and love? I could not possibly tell you how many iterations I went through. It took about 18 months, a little bit less, like 16 months, I guess, from the initial idea to getting a game that was actually like for sale, which is very fast especially for a first game like this. And I went through iteration after iteration after iteration. So I would just like work on it during the day, and then I would find people to play with me at night. And I do that at least 2 or 3 times a week for months. And so a lot of different versions that came in and went through it. So anybody that's out there, that's basically what I teach in my course too, right? Is it's a process of iteration. And the faster you can get through cycles of play testing, you don't know if your ideas are any good until you test them. And so a lot of it comes down to like your first things don't work super well. You're trying to test the big concepts, find where the fun is. And then over time, you refine and refine and refine. And you go through what I call the phases of design, where you focus on different questions at each phase until you get to something that's polished and ready for sale. And so that was the process that I used. Let's see here. What are some key things you know about creating mechanics, story, and general game building that you wish you knew at the beginning of your career? Well, I mean, a lot of it I just sort of talked about, right? That at the beginning of my career, I thought that, like most people do, that like creativity is a special magical power that some people have and some people don't. And I didn't really think of myself as a creative person. I thought of myself as someone who was a analytical person. I knew I was good at playing games, but I didn't know that I could create games. And I had to study very hard, and I researched about creativity, and I worked with other people who were super creative. And I realized it's just a process. It's a learnable skill set that you can practice and follow step by step to be creative. And that at the end of the day, your job is to create an experience in your audience, and you use whatever tools are available to craft that experience. And whereas when my head, I want to create a balanced game with interesting decisions, and that sort of stuff's important, but it's serving the greater goal of creating an experience that people love, creating things that people connect over, that they remember, that they're excited about, and they want to come back to. And so those are the fundamentals. And again, I tried to put all of this stuff down in paper and the book and other things. So if you want to know more about it, check out the book or the podcast or the course. Let's see here. We're running a little low on time, but we got a bunch of questions here, which is exciting. Let's see here. Who are some people in the gaming industry that you look up to and why? Oh my God, so many. I mean, first and foremost, I got to give credit to Richard Garfield as the creator of Magic. He is not only obviously brilliant for what he's done there and creating tons of other really cool games like Robo Rally and like the King of Tokyo, a million great games. But I get to work with him, right? I get to work with him on SoulForge, and now creating this new version of SoulForge Fusion, which is another like a physical game with digitally printed cards that are algorithmically generated. And it's just, he's so smart, and being able to work with him is just at such a high level. It's amazing. And there's just so many talented people in the industry. If you want to know more of the people that I admire, like please do check out the podcast because I talk to them. I mean, that's like one of the great joys that I have, is being able to now be friends with these people who were my idol, like Jordan Weitzman, creating not only creating all these epic worlds like Shadowrun and BattleTech, but also like constantly innovating technology, like always being at the forefront of digital, physical things, creating the click system, like being able to just evolve and be a great entrepreneur as well as a game designer. I mean, I just admire that stuff so much, and the fact that I can have these conversations with them, and now I get to share those conversations with the world, is something I'm just super passionate about. I'm a lot more familiar with the digital game than the physical. I can imagine the portals from Promo 5 are a huge pain in the ass of the physical game compared to the digital. You're right. Those were designed for the digital game. They're much better in digital. We made a version of them that works in the physical game because we thought it'd be kind of fun. But yes, there are some things that work great in digital. There are some things that work great in physical. We try now to make stuff that works in both. Fortunately, Ascension really does play well in both worlds. I really love War of Shadows, probably your favorite set. What were the key inspirations developing its mechanics, such as using the light and dark cards? Gary Arant, I wish he was here. He was the lead design on that set. It was his first lead design. And I want to tell you some things about Gary. He's not on screen as much as I am, although he has been doing some of our Stoneblade streams. So you can tune in Wednesdays at 4 p.m. on twitch.tv/Stoneblade to watch those streams. This Wednesday, I'll be playing Deliverance in the app right before you get to buy it. So come check it out. But Gary is incredible. He's been working with us since the very beginning. And he started out as just a kid that I found in the game store. He was playing at the local game store, and he learned so much, and he became like an incredible designer in his own right, manager in his own right. And War of Shadows, that light and dark mechanic, was his idea, and it really it created this cool like on-off element, and this cool idea of being able to have the game shift dramatically from one thing to another. And the heart of it was, and the heart of really what every Ascension set is trying to do, is to make every purchase, make the center row, the tension of what you buy in the center row, as exciting as possible. And the fact that not only do I care now about cards that are, what do they do for my deck, or what do I want to take away from my opponent, but I also need to think about how buying those cards influences the light and day switch? Is it going to make it so that it's going to shift from one to the other? How does that impact the cards in my hand? How does it impact the future turns or my opponent's future turns? The excitement of what the next flip is going to be is even higher in War and Shadows, because I need to know if it's a light card, that it turns on my powers, and if it's not, then it doesn't. So there's all kinds of cool things that add drama to the action in the center, and that's really the most fun of Ascension is all that focus on the center row. Okay, we got time for maybe a couple more questions here. How big of a train wreck is it playing all the expansions at once? Train wreck is too strong a term. I think playing all the expansions at once is something that's fun to do in the app, and it's fun because it's constant variety, right? There's always going to be different stuff happening. There's always going to be weird permutations and combinations that you don't expect. Is it balanced? No, it's not designed to be played that way. I'm not trying to balance that version of the game. So if you're looking for a high strategy, like very detailed, tactical, well-tuned experience, please, stick with like 2 sets together. Keep it only a couple sets at a time. If you want just the crazy, see what happens and like have fun and have a constant variety every time, go for it. Combine all the sets together, have a good time. What was the thought behind the fate cards in Return of the Fallen? I think the idea of a deck building game where some cards have effects before they enter your deck is amazing. Thank you very much. So the fate cards were actually in the original set of Ascension that I was working on. Back when I was prototyping and playtesting, fate cards were one of the first ideas I had, because again, from the very beginning, I knew that what was special about Ascension, right? What the innovation of Ascension is, the biggest thing was that center row. The fact that cards would come out and change, and you would see a new card show up all the time, and that would completely change the game, was always the most important thing. And so even in set 1, I had fate cards where they would show up and change what happened in the game immediately. However, you don't want to introduce all that stuff all up front, right? You don't, and one of the keys when you're making games, and this is another good game design tip, right? It's very tempting to just put everything you can into your first set. You want to just show off all the cool things. You want to have all the mechanics, but really what you want to do is trim the fat, trim things down to the essence. What's the heart of the game? What's just the most fun that you can do, and just give people that experience, and then add on over time. And so Fate was pulled out to be able to be introduced later in Return of the Fallen as a major mechanic. But I also love it, and it's been lots of fun. And similar with things like events that came in Storm of Souls, where that changed what was going on. Even the fact that in Dreamscape and Deliverance, the fact that a Dreamborn card can show up and give you that extra insight that you need to be able to then buy Pacifia before your opponent's turn, or whatever cool thing you were going to do, can have a huge impact. I see a question about the champion cards in Dawn of Champions. So what was the thinking behind those? Well, so those were designed to give you unique starting positions, right? Ascension in its entire history has always been, you have different. Everybody starts from the same kind of base ground. Even in Dreamscape, you start, before you draft, you start in the same base ground. Here with the champion cards, you have something that gives you a different direction that could help you move forward and get excited about it. And then we actually are introducing brand new champions in the carry case. You're going to have 4 new champions that you can play with, so you get even more variety and that don't necessarily push you in one direction or another. The champions do tend to like push you in one direction, right? The 4 champions and Dawn Champions all really want you to buy cards of their faction to turn on their powers. And so they give you a pretty clear, like, kind of initial path, which can be great for new players, especially. I don't like to play with it as much over time because I don't want to have to play the same sort of deck over and over. So that's why the new champions really help with that. Strategy question. Let's see. Actually, I only have time for like 1 or 2 more, so I'm just going to scan it. Do you and Brian Kibler still keep in touch? Yes. In fact, I saw him a week or 2 ago as I was driving up. He lives up in Santa Monica now. So I didn't get to see him as often because I'm down in San Diego and it's a bit of a drive. But as I was driving up the coast on my trip, we hung out. We got to catch up. He and I are still good friends. Can you give a brief summary of the overall story of Ascension? Okay. I think that's probably going to be the last question I'm going to be able to take, given that we're already near an hour. And a brief summary, even that is going to take a short time. So I'll start with the basics here. So initially, in Chronicle of the Godslayer, the world is now being overrun by the forces of the fallen one, right? The fallen god. And in the ancient times, the gods all warred. The god of the god of the Lifebound, the god of the Void, god of each of the factions would war with each other because Samael, who was originally the god of love and passion, became corrupted. And when they first all fought, they were all part of the same world, one world, and they almost destroyed everything, the gods fighting each other. And so they ended up splitting the world and creating a barrier. So each of the factions had their own separate world apart from Vigil, which was the kind of main home world. And when Samael found a way to get through the Great Barrier, thanks to the work of the cultists, he starts sending his monsters through, and he starts coming through as his avatar. And the gods decide they can't battle him directly, so they need to find a mortal to help, and that is the God Slayer. And so they start sending aid and power through that whichever player gets the most honor becomes the God Slayer and takes out Samael. And that's basically the same arc in Return of the Fallen, where Samael returns in his true form. After that, you see Storm of Souls and Immortal Heroes, where when Samael's dead, there's now this power vacuum, and Kythus, who is the guardian of the realm of the dead, starts using the souls of the dead heroes to try to gain power to become a god himself and take over for Samael. And the players have to stop him. And then by freeing the souls of all these trapped heroes, the heroes return to life. Then in Rise of Vigil, we find these mysterious energy shards raining down on the realm. And we don't know why they're there yet at first. And they come together. And then once we do find out what happened, is that they're the parts of the prison that was trapping Erebus. And Erebus was trapped inside the void. And we actually find out that Erebus was the child of Nyx, who's the goddess of the void, and Samael, who is the god of passion and love. And in fact, that Samael's corruption was based on his wanting to have this child and protect this child, which the gods were forbidden from having any children. And so Nyx actually imprisons Erebus and supporting the gods, imprisons Erebus in the void and sets her people to guard it so that he'll never return. And Samael goes mad and tries to go and kill everybody. And so Samael ends up having this sympathetic character arc. And then the players have to now stop Erebus when he breaks free from his prison after being trapped for millennia. And then that kind of ends that first 3-year story arc. Now I've run out of time, and so there are more story pieces, but that was kind of my original story arc for Ascension, the original first 3 years. And I've also talked a little bit about the most recent story, which is about Deliverance and the arc of Pacifia and the nightmares of delirium spreading to the world, and the return of Pacifia, and players being able to then close the dreamscape again and save it. And you, as the hero, will be able to help to save the realm and close the dreamscape and return things to normal on Thursday, May 27th, when we release the Deliverance update in the app. You'll also be able to play it on the 10th anniversary edition for free. It's just by downloading the update. There's tons of exciting things, and I will share more stories, and I will play and show off more cool tricks and strategy tips in the app on Wednesday, the day before the release, at 4 p.m. on twitch.tv/Stoneblade. For everybody that joined me today, thank you so much. For everybody that's been following and playing Ascension for all of these years, I cannot express my gratitude and joy at being able to continue to do what I do. To be able to interact with you this way is great. And I really look forward to being able to interact with you in person, hopefully one day when we get to the other side of this. But in the meantime, I will see you online. I will see you in the app. Thank you guys for joining, and I'll be back again on Wednesday. Thanks, guys.